I've worked on a campaign with Bill Oddie, which is a quite well-known comedian in the UK, at least. Brunello Cucinelli, who's a fashion entrepreneur based in Italy. I worked in sport, as you mentioned, so I've worked with Didier Drogba, Fabregas, Eden Hazard, and a few other celebrities. And I've also worked with some music talents. So I directed a music video for Sharon Elson, who was the lead singer of Massive Attack. And then I've also worked for Rudimental on a project for Microsoft. So
Global Socialpreneurs is brought to you in part by Positive Talk Radio, KKNW 1150 AM in Seattle. Check them out at www.positivetalkradio.net.
Welcome to Global Socialpreneurs, a one-of-a-kind talk show showcasing expert social entrepreneurs. Learn their stories and their secrets to creating a sustainable impact. Now, here is your host, social entrepreneur Anne Scotland.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Anne Scotland. Thank you for joining us again today here on Global Socialpreneurs. We're a show that's about changing the conversation around social entrepreneurship, what that means for the planet, and how we can create more sustainable impact. So we're streaming on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific. That is 12 p.m. Eastern, and I think that's 5 p.m. BST if you're one of our UK followers. So you can tune in each week there. So I want to jump right in today, but before I do, I want to let you know if you have any questions or comments, you can always shoot them over to me. You can email me. You can go to the website, globalsocialpreneurs.com, and check out several of the other offerings that we have there. So today, I'm really excited to have someone I've been looking forward to having on the show for quite a while. It's a man who uses his talent, who uses his craft to encourage us to think about how we can create a kinder, more collaborative, more ethical world. His name is Riccardo Sai. He's a versatile award-winning film director. Riccardo grew up in Italy. He studied at the University of Bologna, also the London Film School and the New York Film School, where he earned his diploma in directing and photography. And Riccardo is the founder of Storo, a visual storytelling agency for ethical brands. Please help me welcome Riccardo.
Thank you, Anne. Hello, everybody.
So nice to have you with us here today, Riccardo. And so you studied at the New York Film. Was it a Film Academy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
yes,
I started at the New York Film Academy and at the London Film School as well in London. So
wonderful. Well, you really got to work in some amazing places. For anyone in show business, you know that is those are very reputable schools. So, Riccardo, you've had the privilege of collaborating with some prominent figures in your career, which must be exciting. Can you share some of maybe the most unforgettable individuals you've worked with? We're talking about celebrities, sports stars. Spill the beans.
Well, I must say, my portfolio and the type of brands and talents and actors that I've worked with is quite diverse. So I've been focusing on so many different things, from like dramas to photography to music videos, etc., etc. So it's so I work with a different pool of talents. Let's put it that way. So I've worked on a campaign with Bill Oddie, which is a quite well-known comedian in the UK, at least. Brunello Cucinelli, who's a fashion entrepreneur based in Italy, but is a kind of a global entrepreneur. He sells his outfits all around the world. I worked in sport, as you mentioned, so I've worked with Didier Drogba, Fabregas, Eden Hazard, and a few other celebrities. And I've also worked with some music talents. So I directed a music video for Sharon Elson, who was the lead singer of Massive Attack. And then I've also worked for Rudimental on a project for Microsoft. So, I mean, this is just to name a few, but yeah, I was lucky.
Well, it's so fun, and so fun to work with other people who are movers and shakers, and especially when you have the opportunity to meet and work with a director like you yourself, who believes so much in the ethics behind the stories we tell. And so your filmmaking often centers on values and ethics-driven storytelling, which is kind of a specific thing, kind of new in our conversation, ethics-driven storytelling. How can social entrepreneurs harness this power, this ethics-driven storytelling, to fuel their movement and also to attract investors?
Well, I think as in the current times, I think especially after the pandemic, at least, I noticed a shift towards different kind of business, which were more ethical driven, purpose driven, and that to me was also the reason why I decided to work more with those kind of entrepreneurs and brands, because it was just I felt I wanted to make a change with my work, really. And so in a way, having at the core of your business a moral code, an ethical code, and a set of solid values as well, it's so important for a social entrepreneur, because that's really where everything starts. So, and that will resonate with the stakeholders, investors, as well as customers as well. So that's so important, because people are there's an appetite, I think, for brands and for companies which are driven not just by profit. So having that as part of the core business, and that really kind of the foundation of your company is so invaluable, because it will definitely resonate with anyone else, really. And so I think it's so important, and I think having a stories as well are a powerful way of communicating that to anyone, really. So once you have clear what are the values around your business, what is your mission, what is your purpose, really, what is your why are you doing what you're doing, what are you trying to achieve, what kind of impact you want to achieve. And once that is clear, you can use stories to really kind of make an even bigger impact. So
yes, oh, that's amazing. And you and I both being storytellers, and we know how relatable we can make our issue, our question, our impact, our whatever it is we're trying to do and create. We can really make that more relatable to people. I know you've had the opportunity to work with several organizations, including, I think it's gorilla.org. And also you did a film on immigrants in the UK, that allows people to kind of get a glimpse into the lives and situations of others. Or, as you also know, in story, and as I've learned in my own life and career, when we are telling authentic story, now authentic can be real or fictitious, in my opinion, because fictitious can be if it's a story created to make with intention, it has a purpose. But when we tell a story, we become more relatable ourselves, and we give people this ability to sort of peek behind the drape, behind the curtain, and see what would it be like to walk in someone else's shoes. Now, one of the things that you did with the immigrant story that you created the series out of was you found amazing ways to use humor. So humor has been one of your secret ingredients in tackling social issues through storytelling. How can we infuse humor into narratives that revolve around pressing environmental and social concerns?
It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting that you mentioned humor, because just literally this week, I was just checking my LinkedIn feed, and I noticed that a friend of mine who is we've done a lot of work in the past together, and is now back in New Zealand, and he posted a few photos of him with a bunch of polar bears. So they decided to join this march, this climate strike march, and they all dressed like polar bears. And so to me is it's so humor is about it's about really changing perspective and see things in a different way. And and it's interesting because humor has always got kind of two sides. There's one which is the one level of meaning, which is the funny level of meaning. But a lot of time when we think about clowns, for example, they always look kind of sad as well. So there's because humor it's an amazing and very powerful way of talking about very serious matters, but also make them more relatable and digestible as well, because especially when the subjects are very, very hard, the humor can really lighten the tone and really kind of allow the communication to be more engaging and memorable as well. So, and for me, a good example was also that project that I did for the Gorilla organization, which was really about fundraising and get more funding and sponsor a gorilla run, which the organization it was the biggest fundraising opportunity that they organize every year, and they were looking for different ways of really kind of raising awareness about the gorilla who are nearly extinct in Africa. And so that's why we came up with this idea of actually using a celebrity, a comedian, which I mentioned before, Bilodi, and using a real, well, not really a real gorilla, but an animatronic gorilla, but which looked very, very realistic. And we added a splash of humor over the series of films that we've done, and it was a very successful campaign, and it really proving the fact that just using humor to talk about something that is not necessarily funny, it could be quite effective. And I noticed that when it comes to sustainability, a lot of the communication is actually very dry. There's a lot of focus on the numbers of the fact, and of course it's a tragic situation what's happening around the world. But at the same time, if we bombard the people with a lot of negative narratives, people will just stop engaging. It's the same thing with in the news. Of course, there's some horrible things happening around the world, but it's also important to focus on the more positive, uplifting stories as well. So, and using comedy and humor can really help to get the message across in a different way.
That's amazing, and I so agree. It's brilliant, really, because we have to. It's not. People think, oh, it's kind of like social entrepreneurship. People say, oh, what, you're doing a business, making a social impact program that's for profit, like you're making money. And we're like, yes, that is the point. We're leading by example. We are making money. We are making money also to further the cause we're working on. So it might seem a little counterintuitive, but also humor when you're talking about things like war and famine and human trafficking and environmental crisis. It seems like, I think part of how people distance themselves is because it's too painful to engage in a way. It's too painful to, they're like, I have enough stress in my life, right? So finding ways to use humor, people who are gifted with humor and writing great scripts, finding ways to make that more accessible and interesting. I mean, because truly, if we can't sort of laugh at ourselves as a whole human race, if we can't find the funny in the little things every day, it's a loss to us anyway. So, Riccardo, your dedication to creating these stories that drive sustainable change is really inspiring and exciting, hearing you share these stories with us. Can you share some personal experiences or maybe some turning points in your life that have shaped your focus on storytelling for a better world? Like, what brought about this passion in you to create story with purpose?
Oof, that's a that's a tough one. I think I always had in me a passion for good, for doing good in this world. So I think I always been ethically driven. I used to be a Boy Scout. Doesn't mean anything, but it really allowed me to learn about the values and really how important it is to behave in an ethical way in this world. So I think it's always been with me. Same thing with the art and creativity. I always loved telling stories, and that was part of my DNA, I would say. So it was just a matter of time that the two things could really come together. in just one package. So I started to work more in in advertising, in film and photography. And but funny enough, actually, at the beginning, I was doing a lot of work for, like, for example, for UNICEF, for the Red Cross Federation. So I was doing a lot of those kind of projects. And then I got like carried away by advertising, and I started to work with brands, big brands like Microsoft, Nike, Lenovo, etc., etc. So it was only a few years later where I managed to reconnect with my true purpose, which is really kind of using stories for social good. And I think that the turning point, when we're talking about stories, storytelling, the turning point for me was when I met Buddhism. And Buddhism was it could be a religion, could be defined as a philosophy. I like to see Buddhism more as a philosophy. So that led to a lot of quite traumatic changes in my life, including my divorce, including many other things that really shifted really my perspective about life. What are the priorities on life? Also, many years ago, I had a relationship with a person who was suffering of cancer, and before that, I also directed 2 documentaries about cancer, and so that, together with the Buddhist philosophy, really kind of shifted something within myself, and that's how I started to really think about how can I use what I know best, which is to tell stories and to create beautiful images for good. And that was the beginning of the transformation of my business, really. And so that now focuses more on sustainable, ethical, purpose driven and value driven brands and organizations. So that was the beginning of everything. I think that there's one concept in Buddhism which, to me, it was quite profound. Is a Japanese expression that says itai doshi, I think it is. It means many in bodies, one in mind. To me, that really captured the essence of what I think should be driving life, I think. So thinking about it as us as individuals, so we're all separate, we're all different, we all have an incredible stories to tell, we all have fundamentally different. But if we shift the way we think as in one mind, meaning that we are all part of one. So again, if someone is religious, you can think about God, you can think about Mother Nature, you can think about the universe, whatever. You can talk about quantum physics. There's different ways you can really explain that. But to me, that's the fundamental truth about how we really need to change and shift our perspective. So thinking about us as individuals, but in a different context, as part of something bigger. So one mind in that sense.
Yes, and you and I were even talking another day. We were talking about nature and how as far as the environment and sort of sometimes those overwhelming messages we get about the trouble that we face. We often tend to kind of do it versus us scenario, and forgetting that we're part of nature. And I always say, I don't just say I'm looking out the window at nature. Nature is outside looking in at nature, because I am part of nature. We are all part of nature. So when we can embrace that, when we can have a bit of humor, when we can learn from nature itself, which I think is incredibly, incredibly wise, and can teach us so many things. It's a grounding experience, and taking that in association with our personal experiences, the development of our personal values, our own stories like yours, through even rough patches, which help you really clarify what it is that you want to do in the world, is a really beautiful thing. And so I had another question about the social values part of this. So as social entrepreneurs, we know that it's often very demanding, kind of weaving these social values and sustainability into the fabric of our enterprise. So what is it about the field of social entrepreneurship that, in your view, holds the potential to make our world a better place, even though, you know, we're struggling to kind of keep social values and sustainability as part of our profit plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Anne. So I do think that the world should really shift into a direction where every business is a sort of a social enterprise. That's my dream. I think if there were more social enterprises, if there were more businesses based around values and ethics, I think this world will be a better one.
Mm.
So social entrepreneurs, they have an advantage because that's already part of their DNA. It's part of who they are. It's part of their mission. It's part of their brand values. It's part of that even the reason why they exist. So that's a huge USP, I think. And so I think that's the advantage. So, but I think there should be more, more, more brands, more entrepreneurs really driven by that, and also I don't think there shouldn't be much of a difference between our personal life and how we run our business, and we're going back to one of the values that I respect the most, which is integrity also. So if we don't have leaders who have these as a value at the heart of who they are as people, even more than entrepreneurs, I think it's not good. So I think is that there's a lot of there should be more focus also on really kind of building ourselves in a way around values and ethics which are strong, and also living and breathing those values as well, because there's nothing worse than and you know, we have so many problem with brands and greenwashing, green hushings, etc., because basically what the way they behave and the way they are when it comes to brand values, proper brand propositions, etc., they don't align. And that's, you know, that's true for like bigger brands, and it's true also for smaller brands or like solopreneurs type of companies. So it's so important, I think, and it's such a USP for an entrepreneur to really really have that as the as kind of the map that they use to really design and drive their business forward. So yeah, so that's how I think. But we need to be hopeful.
Yes, absolutely. Need to be hopeful. Now your enterprise is called Storo, and our producer asked right before the show if that was the Italian word for story, which I thought was actually a really good question since you called it Storo. But actually, you named that for something else, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when I was going through the rebrand, and just as I said before, as really thinking about what's next for me, because I always love my work, but I was thinking for a different purpose. I just thought about how can so stories is at the heart of what I do, and I want to create meaningful stories. I want to help brands to tell different stories. And how can I call my company? And I just thought a lot of time the answer is in your roots, where you're coming from. And I've been living in the UK for 20 years, but I'm Italian, as you can probably tell from my accent. My family, or at least half of my family, is actually from a little town called Storo in the Alps. So it's a village that I always loved, and I have not many memories because I didn't grow up in the village, but through my dad's stories, again, we're going back to stories, I just fell in love with that village. And it's I mean, think about that my parents, my dad's family home is probably 600 years old. So think about how many people have lived in that house, how many stories that house can really tell if it could have a voice. So yeah, so that's the explanation behind
That's
that name.
amazing. And your enterprise then, Storo, is about ethical storytelling, or how do you describe that in a sentence or two?
Yeah, it's the way I describe what I do. It's a visual storytelling, because we focus on visuals or images and stories. I mean, effectively, images are stories. So there could be moving images with sound, and then we have films. So films, they typically they have 24 or 25 images per second, or it could be just one photo. So there's many different ways you can tell stories with images, and you can tell stories with just with sounds. And it's so. And the idea is to really focus on these as really kind of powerful marketing tools to communicate what is that brand about, really. So to tell the stories of how the brand started, for example, what are the values driving the brands, what are the ethics, what is the origin story, and that could be done in so many different ways, through documentaries, through like personal branding photography, through many different ways. So visual storytelling somehow it summarizes everything that we do in just 2 words.
Oh, that's excellent. It really does. It's a really great explanation too. So thank you for that. So, so I know you've been asked this before, but how can storytelling transcend all the cultural and geographical, political, religious boundaries that we have in our world? How can storytelling transcend that to really create meaningful change?
So stories are actually about change. That's probably the quickest answer to your question. So stories are universal. They travel between territories, between cultures, between times as well. There has been a lot of like scientific research about myths, about from a historical and psychological perspective. Prop is one of those researchers. There has been like psychological research about that. Jung is one of the psychologists who was really passionate about myth and how they really shape our lives. And a lot of these researchers then they became part of really how we create stories in these current times. So a lot of if you read any of the screenwriting books, I mean, one of the most famous is probably Robert McKee or Sid Field. They're all based around the researches that have been done before by all these people and many others that I don't have time to mention now. And but effectively, stories are about change, really. So, and if you look at any films, if you read any books, there's always some kind of transformation. So there is a transformation, an outside transformation, because there's usually not all the time, but there's usually a hero, a person going through a transformation, going through obstacles, and at the end coming back to let's say their homes, but with a different perspective about life and about themselves. So the hero's journey, also to quote another very famous book about storytelling, it's exactly that. It's about that transformation of that hero who goes through the forest, who fights dragons, etc., etc. And at the end, he learns something about himself or herself, and he comes back as a new man or a new woman. So that's why we relate to stories, because all our life is about that constant battle and that constant need for change, but also fear for change. And I think when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think a lot of entrepreneurs can probably relate to that. It's so difficult to start a new business. You build a lot of castles along the way. There's a lot of barriers that somehow you build yourself in front of you, so that your business will never fly, will never start. So a lot of time, there's a physical element, but also there's a lot of psychological and more internal obstacles that you need to face. that's why we relate to stories, because our life is about change. There's one constant in life, which is change. Everything changes all the time, but it's scary. It's scary to change. But that's what is life about. So, but that's why we love stories, and we learn through stories. We learn about the world. We learn about ourselves. And that's why they're so powerful.
Wow, that is very impactful, to be sure. And I love what you said about the hero's journey and overcoming the dragons, and going all along the way, and then perhaps back to the place he came from, but having learned more about his or herself. And I think that since we kind of know the story paradigm as human beings, since most all of us have grown up on stories of one sort or another, we kind of know how the flow is. We know it's ingrained almost in our DNA how storytelling goes, how the beginning, the middle, the end, that many stories have a specific purpose. And we see stories in our own life. So when we are relating to a story that's about social challenges or environmental challenges, when we see it in that way, we know how to flow with it. It's different from just having an argument. It's making a point without an argument in some cases, because we know how the flow goes. So our neural pathways know how to follow story from a logical beginning to end. And this is one of those incredible tools, as you mentioned, Jung and so many others, and myth, these incredible tools we have that really works with the human psychology and can create change on a global scale. And I think that all of us who are committed to this, who are working to create impact, should take advantage of the opportunity that you've shared with us today to tell stories, and tell visual stories when you can. Of course, a story can just be a single picture, but tell the stories that you can to make that impact. Riccardo, it's been so nice to have you with us today. Thank you so much for taking your valuable time to be here and talk to us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank all of you who are tuned in and watching the show today. And again, as always, please tune in at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's 12 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays for our streaming show. You can find out more at globalsocialpreneurs.com, spelled just like it sounds, globalsocialpreneurs.com. You can also find out more about Riccardo and his company and some of the other work he's doing in the notes. And please reach out anytime if you have any questions or comments for us. We would love to know. We have a new Socialpreneurs Forum beginning the end of this month, so you want to check that out. You might want to sign up for our newsletter if you'd like to stay posted about what's going on. And if you would like to be a sponsor of this show, if this is aligned with your values, we would love to hear from you. Or if you know someone who would be a great guest, please email me. My email is right there on the website. So thank you again. Go out today, be kind to others, and be kind to yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.